I'm Scott Hambrick.
I'm Karl Shute.
And I'm Trent Jones.
And today on the Music and Ideas podcast, we are going to talk about that which we know nothing of. We're going to do a show about Indian classical music, and Trent has put together a list for us today that we're going to discuss. But I wanted to say right at the top of this thing that we have never done a show about something that we knew so little about. We've been lying about everything that we've done so far, but this time we really don't know. We really what
was that expression? Never have so many who knew so little talked so long about so much.
Right. Like, I think that there's a good chance.
Something like that.
Tell me if I'm wrong here, Trent. I think there's a really good chance. Like, you did a great job with the list. Thank you for doing that. But I think there's a really good chance that you missed the Beethoven of this. Like, because we just don't know, and the language barrier and everything, it's so hard.
Yeah. That's fair. I don't really know a whole lot about this music. I'm going to attempt to cover some of the basics here, but I'm probably going to screw this up. Like,
no, I want to know. See, for me, this show is more about Trent than it is about Indian classical music. I want to know what drew you to this.
Well,
yeah, no kidding.
George Harrison.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think music is. Well, at least for me, music is primarily intuitive. I don't digest it intellectually first. I go back and do that later. It just hits me, and I just intuitively like it or I don't. And whenever I've heard Indian classical music, the melody and the richness of the melody it's always captivated me. Why, I am not entirely sure. But I think it's colorful. I think it has a lot of flavor, if you will. And probably I picked up like my ear was drawn to it because the Brits have appropriated Indian classical music. They've just kind of desecrated it in pop music since the 60s. Yeah, George Harrison learned to play a little bit of sitar. He studied with Ravi Shankar. He's probably the most famous Indian musician in the Western world, the most well-known. You brought up offline, Karl, Pink Floyd. There's kind of some that whole psychedelia movement in the 60s, and it's kind of been a sideshow in the rock world.
Well, definitely who assimilated whom, The Indian music might have assimilated them. Because the best English food is curry.
Right. Yeah, you get a fish and chips place, and they put curry on there.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think the food metaphors work really well in music, and I think the food metaphor is apt here. Whether you like it or not, Indian food is some of the most flavorful that you're going to have out there. It's very rich.
I think it's the best food in the world.
I think it is.
Well, that's a big claim.
And you may not like it, but you can't deny that it's the spices, the range of spices and acids and fats and all that stuff that goes into the flavor of food. It's just incredibly diverse and it's incredibly rich. And
so Scott didn't like that I said that. He said that's a big claim.
Big claim.
Yeah. Well, the whole reason there's a British Empire, or there was a British Empire, was because there was Indian food.
Spices.
Yeah. If you're in Northern Europe, you're eating, what are you eating?
Onions, garlic.
Meat that you killed that day,
turnips.
And then that you try to spice with some onions, maybe? Some garlic?
They had salt. They had salt in the middle of...
So you can cover up the spoilage. But then you get peppers. Well, chili peppers are South American.
Right,
but then you get like peppercorns from India.
Yeah.
And that's kind of mind-bending too. So Indian food is very spicy with chili peppers, except that they didn't get chili peppers till the Portuguese brought them from South America.
The nightshades.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, this isn't about food.
Is it?
I want to know so you gave us a raga. What is a raga?
Yeah. So, well, let me back up just a little bit from there, and I'll get to the raga. Mm-hmm. So, essentially, within Indian music, there are two very broad forms, if you will, or musical styles. One originates from the northern part of India. That's called Hindustani. One originates from the southern part of India. That is called Carnatic music. And really, they sound very similar if you're unfamiliar with this music, but they do have some important differences. Hindustani music is going to be a little bit more freeform, a little bit more improvised. It's a little closer to jazz than Carnatic music, which is more of a set piece. It's written down, or at least it's orally transmitted from student to student, and the pieces are performed as is. There's not a whole lot of flexibility for musicians to interpret it in their own way. There's some, but not a whole lot. So, these are the two sort of broad columns of Indian music, Indian classical music that are out there. Both of them share the same song form. The raga is probably the most important part of the song form. And so a raga, see, this is where it gets hard, because we can relate it to Western musical concepts, but that's not exactly what it is. But the raga is essentially a variations on a theme. So when you listen to Beethoven or Bach or, some Western classical composer, often you will have a melody or a theme that is stated at the beginning of a piece, and then variations of that theme will comprise various movements that the symphony moves through as the piece develops. That's kind of what a raga is. A raga is it's a melody based around a scale. So it kind of defines a chord and a scale that the melody will draw from. And then the melody will repeat throughout the raga, but there's a lot of interpretation that the lead player can do with that melody. So the lead player can choose to play this pattern of notes in multiple ways. So it's not exactly a melody, right? It's not like we're going to play, F sharp, G, D. There's going to be an ascending pattern that repeats throughout the piece, but it could be moved around to different notes. So it's not exactly a melody, but that's probably the easiest way to think of it, is a melodic statement with variations on a theme. So the raga, as you listen to these, it will move through different moods. Usually it starts very slowly, very contemplative mood. There's a drone that's played by an instrument. Typically that's something called a tanpura. But there's an instrument that will essentially play a chord. And this instrument just resonates. It doesn't really do much. It just kind of plays a series of notes within the chord and just resonates and drones. And the player just occasionally plucks the strings. So over that drone, a lead instrument like a sitar or perhaps a vocal performance, a lead instrument of some kind will start playing the theme, the melodic theme. And we'll listen to an example here in a second, and you'll get a taste for what that theme is. But it starts very, very slow, very soft, very contemplative mood over just a drone. There's no other accompaniment yet. And then as the piece develops, it will go through different movements where rhythmic elements will be introduced by drums and potentially some other instruments. And it'll get a little faster and more intense, and it will evolve over, a period of time into other movements until it's done.
Over the next 49 minutes.
Right. But that's your raga, and that's sort of the most basic element of this music that you need to understand to really make sense of it. So it's a melodic statement, variations on a theme. It's supposed to represent, I believe, sort of like the cycles of the natural world. So there's morning, there's late morning, afternoon, night, etc. There's the cycles of the seasons. There's sort of cycles of life as you get older, and it's kind of supposed to capture the cyclical nature of life in the spirit, in the natural world, the time of day. So there's some some spiritual significance to this.
It seems to me, and I don't know much about it. I know almost nothing about it. So I'm just going to spitball and everything I say is wrong. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and offend everybody. There's probably not a more spurky culture on the globe than the Indian culture. So when we get stuff wrong, like just, hey, listen, just keep it to yourself. Like this is three guys. We are three guys who are curious about certain kinds of music, well, really all kinds of music. And we're dipping our toe in here. And I don't think any of us is going to try to say anything authoritative about this. So when we get it wrong, hey, listen, we didn't crap on your culture. We just got it wrong. This is an honest exploration. And if it's and if you want to correct us, just do that in your closet by yourself. I don't need to have any knowledge of your need to correct me.
Yeah. Look. So what's the point of exploring this kind of stuff, right? Like, I think it's because we all are music lovers. We have a shared interest in music, and part of music, for good or bad, is exploring new things and being open to new experiences. And, we're not an educational show. We like to kind of capture the essence of a thing when we can. But I hope that the show mainly allows you, dear listener, some new music that wasn't on your radar to experience.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so you say like there was a spiritual element to the raga. So I'm going to get everything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't care because I'm dipping into it.
Yeah.
It's like let's go back to food, okay? So I have cooked Indian food. I have dipped into Thai cooking recently. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no connection with those cultures. Should I not cook their food or make my attempt at their food?
Speaking of, I saw your attempts at my food on Instagram. Karl is cooking biscuits.
Yeah,
it's good. It's a good thing.
Poor
to
Karl.
do. It's a good thing to do.
I made my first 3 batches. Should I have not done that? Did I culturally appropriate you?
Well, no, you did not culturally appropriate me. But the thing that bugs me about internet culture is they won't let you make biscuits and mess up. They won't let you.
Okay.
We can't have like it. You just have to be an expert, right? You're like, oh, well, you delved into this. Like, why isn't it perfect? Or why didn't you know about this one particular nuance or whatever? But the reason I said all that is I don't know anything about this music, but I do know some stuff about music. And we just did a show about chant. And the theme of that show was really like, hey, this isn't music first, it's worship first. And the fact that people enjoy it or listen to it or use that aesthetic or whatever came later, and it wasn't the primary aim here. Well, I suspect that that's true here too. I don't know much about the Hindu people or their faith or Hindustani music or India or really anything else. But it is my impression after listening to this that this is primarily a contemplative support for Hindu spirituality. If I'm wrong,
I think that's the way that it originated. I don't know that. So I have a few Indian friends that I spoke with about this. None of whom are experts in music, but they kind of gave me their perspective. I don't know that your Indian citizen today would necessarily say that it's religious, that this music is religious in nature. But I do think it is a very strong, because it is so woven into Indian culture, is a very strong affirmation of their culture and who they are. And it's very uniquely Indian. Yes, there have been fusions in the music as well as the food, but this traditional music is just sort of like it allows you to sort of rally around this thing that is like, who are we as a people? Like what defines us? Just like folk music in the Appalachian South, let's say. So this music is performed in multiple languages. There's various regions of India where they all have their own styles, and they're in fact, we'll get to some of this. There's a concept called Jugalbundi, which is a mashup of different Indian classical styles.
I thought that was a Pokemon.
From different parts of the country. And so basically it's a celebration of Indianness. I think that would be fair to say.
All right, so I've got the Infogalactic Raga page up. Some interesting things. Apparently the name means coloring or dyeing originally. Now that makes a bit more sense to me. So listening to this 23-minute, the first track, it's a whole lot of color. I can't really hum a melody from it. Not like you mentioned Beethoven, where you can hum a symphony.
Yeah.
After you leave it, you can get the theme. I don't think I can do that, but it's like it's coloring and it's not in a hurry. It takes a while to dye clothes.
It is not in a hurry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think about making curry. So one of my Indian friends, he told me once, he's like, if you really want to make good curry, you've got to simmer it. He's like, I might simmer it all day. He's like, he loves to make curry, but he doesn't do it very often because it takes forever to really do it right.
So is your friend like the Wynton Marsalis of Indian music? He's always talking about the Trinity and jazz and all that. I get so tired of him.
Not quite.
Okay.
But, he's very generously answered a bunch of my questions.
So, and the reason I hope we're going to listen to some of it, but the reason I brought up Pink Floyd is sometimes in this English music from this period, Scott called it tuning. I thought that was funny. They'll noodle for they won't do it for 20 minutes. Yeah. But so I put in a track, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which has about 5 minutes in the beginning, which nothing really happens.
Yeah.
It's just cool notes. And for me, that was very much raga-like when I got to your playlist. And by the way, I did, on my quick search on the internet, there is apparently a version of Comfortably Numb done on Indian instruments, which I'm going to listen to immediately after this podcast.
Oh, good.
Interesting.
After.
Yeah, so let's, I want to talk more about the raga and some of the melodic elements. And what you just said, Karl, is that you don't know that you could hum it and how that works here. So let's listen to the first track on the playlist. This is 20 minutes long, so we're not going to listen to the whole thing, but here's what I would like to do. I would like to listen to maybe a minute of it at the very beginning. This is the slow, contemplative part. We're just starting to establish the mood here. We're just starting to simmer the curry. And then we'll skip ahead. We'll talk about it a little bit, and then we'll skip ahead to maybe 3 minutes and then 7 minutes in and hear some of the different movements.
All right. Well, listen, I'm just here for the tabla. So whatever it takes to get to that, I'm good with it.
We'll get there.
Okay,
we'll get there.
Here we go. Raga Bageshri? I don't know. Listen,
Bageshri? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Raga Bageshri.
Preemptively apologize for all the mispronunciations.
Yep. Yeah. It's going to be tough for me. We didn't talk about that in Katusa.
Okay, so there's your drone instrument and your lead instrument, the sitar.
So, this has been appropriated. I hear this and I want to tell Trent, go ahead and get undressed. You can get face down on the table and cover up with that towel, and I'll be back in just a minute for your massage.
Right.
These things have been just like Karl's chant, our chant, these things have been just dishonored by these sort of casual aesthetic uses, This has a significance that I'm not aware of, but I can tell it's there. They wouldn't do this for 21 minutes and 35 seconds for a lark.
Right. Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. That's important, or that comes up rather, in the rhythmic form of this music. So we haven't really heard any rhythm yet. We're going to get there. The drums will come in. We'll hear some rhythmic elements, but this is kind of mind-bending. The way this music works is that we've got a scale, right? We've got a chord essentially that the drone instrument's playing. It's basically an F sharp. It's not playing all of the notes of the F sharp chord, but that's essentially what the sitar's playing over is. Rhythmically, there are set movements that the musicians will go through, right? This quiet contemplative part, they'll get more involved, they'll get faster, but there's not there's no demarcation of time in a Western sense. So like in Western music, we would say, okay, we're going to play this piece and there's a meter that's going to be the basic, like the way that we move through the piece. It's going to be 4/4. We're going to have 4 beats per measure, and we're going to play a given number of measures. And there might be a director or we might set the tempo in a certain way, and we'll say that it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And we'll play 256 measures, or whatever. Well, that's the Western style of dividing up the piece. If I understand the raga correctly, these musicians they have a beginning and an end to each rhythmic cycle that they'll introduce. And they know what the cycle will be. So it will be a collection of beats similar to meter, like maybe 4, 4, 2, and 2. And all the rhythms that will be played will be grouped into that pattern. But they don't know exactly how long the piece will be before they start playing it. That is improvised. You just know generally what the rhythm is, you know what the melody is, and you're going to feed off each other to know when to move into the next movement. But it's not set in stone. It's not like we're going to play this for 3 minutes and then we're moving on to the next piece. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 2.5 minutes. Sometimes these concerts go all night. It's a little strange, but that's where the improvisational aspect of this music comes into play, is that the rhythm is somewhat improvised, even though there is an organizing pattern to it. There's also an organizing melody. In Indian classical music, there's this concept of the sargam, which is a scale. I gave you that F sharp chord that more or less this piece is playing over. Well, they have a scale over that that's similar to do, re, mi. In the Indian scale, it's sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. So the sa is your tonic. That's the first note of the scale in which you're playing. So F sharp in this case. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. The sa is where every statement of the melody will begin on the tonic, and that's where the drone note will be. So the sa in this case is this F sharp. Sorry, it's a B flat actually, but that's where the melody will begin, and it will move upwards, and then it will move downwards in a particular way. So let's go listen a little bit more to this piece. Let's go to like minute 3 and listen how it develops.
Minute 3.
Okay, pause it. There we go. There's our statement of the raga. There's the upward movement of it. And then he's going to play a downward part too. And what we just heard was the downward piece was. So let's listen to it again.
Okay.
He did it lower down the scale in that time. There's your upward movement. There's your downward movement. So everything in between those pieces is improvised, right? So we just have a basic organizing structure of like what the raga is, which is the, something like that. Everything in between is basically improvised.
Listen to that reverb.
I've got to play an electric guitar here, so I'm trying to simulate a sitar's resonant
You do not have
tones.
a sitar?
I don't have a sitar. Yeah. So does that kind of make sense? That it's difficult to grasp at first because it's not organized like Western music, but there's a lot of similarities. We've got a scale, we've got a mode essentially, we've got a recognizable melody. But it's not maybe hummable because it's going to be improvised and decorated and ornamented.
I have a hard time listening to this because I do not have this sort of fund of musical, melodic, whatever in my file cabinet. So, we were talking about in our show about Clifford Brown, about how to recognize those themes and hear those themes being elaborated on, and kind of finding. And as you listen to more jazz and you recognize more of the themes, you can recognize more themes, and jazz becomes easier to listen to. I have almost no frame of reference here whatsoever, and
right.
I think we've all experienced this. You get in the car, it's 26 degrees, and you pull out on the road and you turn the radio on. When we used to do that, and it would be mid-song, and it would just be like. And then, like you get to the chorus or something, and then you're like, "Oh, well, that's Journey." I knew that song.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But
the brain just didn't.
You just couldn't. Like you just get dropped in the middle of the damn thing, and you don't have any context. You don't know where the downbeat is. You don't know what key it's in. It's just, and you just can't even hear it. It's just like. Have you guys experienced that, or is that just me?
Oh no, certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh shit, that's 38 special." Like, hold on,
especially when you can't find the downbeat of the measure, right? So, like, if you get dropped in on the 2, and you're offbeat, or you get dropped in like on the end of the 1, and then you think the 3 is the 2 and the 4 is the, then you're just all turned upside down until you realize, oh wait, no, I was listening to it wrong. Now I've got the backbeat. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it used to be there was all this stuff on like. Primetime television, like the older people would like turn that noise off. It doesn't even sound. Well, they have no frame of reference for listening to it, and I get dropped in the middle of a 38 special song sometimes, and I can't figure it out. Like almost my entire experience of this 21-minute, 36-second song was being unmoored and just not being able to pick it apart. But you pointing out this ascending and then descending line gives me something I can hold on to. So now I can hear the darn thing. At least some. But if I had been steeped in this since like prenatal,
right?
I could see that it would be an entirely different and better experience than it is for my newbie self right now. Yeah, so it was a big help, Trent. Thank you.
Yeah, and so you're like a good musician probably would know 40 or 50 ragas, and of course, music fans would recognize them as well. And so they would delight. It's kind of like almost like a jazz standard, right? They would delight in how the performer plays the raga and then interprets it, right? What kind of ornament did they put on it? What kind of decoration did they put on it?
So there's a Hindustani analog to play Freebird. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So this is. I'm looking at the charts of the scales. I think that would be a place to start for me.
Nerd.
See, Karl
I know,
intellectualizes.
nerd.
Yeah, I do.
First.
Sorry. That's what I do. So I've got like 9 scales here.
How many tones? How many tones are in those?
Well, these are just 8,
Okay.
but they're separated differently, so they're not diatonic. I think one of them's diatonic, but some of them look similar to like the Greek chant that I've studied. Actually, sounds really similar. I had to remind somebody on our Slack that he'd found reincarnation in Phaedrus in Plato, and he thought that was an Indian thing, and I had to point out Indo-European.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's one culture. They speak the same language. If you go back far enough. Yeah, I mean, the word for father is the same in all of these languages. It's pitar or pater or father or something. It's the same. So we're all the same people, at least Northern Europeans and Indians. It's the same culture. It's just separated by 4,000 years.
Yeah.
But so I would look at the scales and try to work my ears through those, and then I would understand it a bit better. But where it's really different is... So you mentioned Beethoven. So Beethoven will give you a theme, and then he's not going to ornament it. He's going to develop it,
Mm-hmm.
which is a different thing. So European classical music goes a different way. We go back, I think, more towards this kind of music in jazz,
Yeah.
where it's not so much development. I think Thomas Mears might have pointed it out. It's not so much. It's not a theme and variations, but
Development. Yeah.
in jazz, it's much more. Well, we're going to play for 15 minutes on Green Dolphin Street,
Yeah.
and
You
don't
might
know what we're going to do.
Yeah, and it's sort of like it's always an effective thing when you're playing a solo. It's always an effective thing to restate the melody. So in jazz, often the soloist will restate the head of the tune in some way. They may not restate the thing in its entirety during their solo, but they will call back to it because it is the organizing structure of the piece. It's what makes it recognizable. And so if you go way out into orbit with your solo, restating the melody in some way can help bring the audience back in and refocus them on what you're trying to do.
So you'd replay the raga. You'd replay that ascending line and that descending line, and then you'd go and...
Yeah.
I don't want to say noodle because that makes it sound like it's not important, but then you go noodle
Right.
along for another 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it is kind of noodling. So part of this is, I think we need to talk a little bit about the instruments here, because that's part of like understanding how these instruments are played might give you more appreciation for what they're doing. So here at the beginning of the piece, we heard a drone being played. It can be played by, there are multiple versions of these instruments. So I'm just going to give you one example but there are others. One common one it's called the tanpura. It's essentially a gourd instrument. So you take a pumpkin, like an actual pumpkin out of the ground, you hollow it out, and you use part of it to create a bowl, and then you attach a neck to it, which is usually made of teak. It's the favorite tone wood of most of these instruments is teak. I guess it resonates in a way that they like. And you essentially, you dry out that pumpkin gourd, and you cover it with teak, and you make a neck with teak out of it, and you put a soundboard on the top of it, and you stretch some strings across it. The tanpura is a drone instrument, so it doesn't really play any melodies. You just tune it to a certain drone, like we heard the saw there, which is that F sharp. You would tune it to various versions of that F sharp and maybe like a fifth as well, and you just strum your finger across the notes. And the musician will just do that and just create this long, droning tone that's sustained through the whole piece. What gives it such interesting timbre is the fact that the instrument is entirely hollow. You've got this big gourd that's the body of the instrument, and the neck itself is hollow too. It's not a solid piece of wood. So everything just resonates and has this hollow, strange quality to it that enhances the stringiness. See, I'm just completely lost for words of how to describe it, but it's very recognizable. The sitar that we heard that's playing the melody is very similar. It's a much bigger instrument. It's much longer and it's heavier, but it's essentially the same thing. You've got a pumpkin gourd that forms the body, and you've got this long neck that's hollow. And what's interesting about it is it has two sets of strings on it. So there's two bridges that the strings are stretched across. The top bridge is the melody strings, and there's usually 5 or 6 of those. And then typically your performer is going to play on one of those strings for most of the melody. It's maybe like the G string of a guitar.
How does that differ from a nut?
Well, there's still a nut at the top of the instrument
Okay.
that the strings will pass over to the tuning pegs. But there's 2 of them essentially. So I'll get there in just a second.
Okay.
But there's one string that the melody will typically be played on. That's kind of like the G string on a guitar. You don't switch strings a whole lot like you would on the guitar. You typically would just run up and down a single string. The bottom set of strings are drone, or what they call sympathetic strings. So you don't actually play them. They're actually physically underneath the top strings, and they resonate in sympathy with those top strings. And that's what gives the note its sustain, right? So I'm kind of trying to mimic that a little bit by using an effect on my guitar, because I only have one string to play with. But you will hear every time a sitar player hits a note, it rings out. And part of that ringing is the body of the instrument that's hollow, but it's also the sympathetic strings underneath the main string set that are sitting there resonating. So you have this goofy thing where you've got a raised fret that you press the string down over, but the fret is actually up in the air. It's not attached to the neck directly. It's raised up so that the sympathetic strings can pass underneath it, like in a tunnel.
Interesting.
You should really go, dear listeners, you should go look up on YouTube. There's plenty of videos you can look up, like how does a sitar work, and you can see people showing you exactly how it all fits together. It's a very beautiful instrument. The craftsmanship is incredible on these things, and it's extremely strange, but it has a very unique sound.
And you want one?
Yes. But it's very so this thing is difficult to play. It's there's a lot going on with this instrument, and being able to play notes cleanly and to intonate them correctly is extremely difficult. And a big part of sitar technique is what they call meend, which is simply string pulling or string bending. So in the guitar, we do that kind of, so instead of playing staccato, like we might go, right? But on the sitar, you've got a much bigger plane and a much bigger fret to bend the string over, and the strings themselves have less tension on them. So you can bend notes very far. And so that's a big part of the sitar technique, and part of what the sitar player is going to be improvising with is bending the string in interesting ways. So let's go to like minute 6, and let's listen to minute 6 as it transitioned to around minute 7, and you'll hear the drums come in and the rest of the instruments. And maybe it'll start to take a form that you like. That's a tabla that you're hearing. So notice how the energy has picked up. Still playing the same raga, but we're in a new movement now. You can really hear those sympathetic strings there. Okay, so there you go. Now we've introduced the rhythmic element of the music. There's the tabla drums that you just heard, which is basically it's a pair of drums that are played with the hands, and you'll notice one is tuned very high, and that is usually tapped with the fingers. And there's a second drum which is bigger and it's tuned lower, and it's played with both the fingertips and the heel of the palm. And you get these really weird and cool little like movement that they can make to the tone of the drum by pushing their heel down into the drum. So you hear it's kind of like a broop.
Yeah, it's a little timpani.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly. It's just like a timpani drum will have a pedal that you can push down and change the tightness of the drum head to change the pitch. You can do the same thing with the heel of your palm. So what they'll do is they'll push down into the drum head and then tap it with their fingers and then lift their hand up, release the pressure, and they've essentially tightened the skin back up. So it goes broop. And because they're tuned so tightly, you can tap with your fingertips and you get so much articulation. You can play these extremely fast. And we'll hear in a second how crazy the tabla can get. But there you go. You've got a basic ensemble of Indian classical instruments right there. We've got a lead instrument, in this case the sitar. We've got a drone instrument, the tanpura. There's another instrument playing kind of like a chimey sort of tone, very similar to the tanpura. You hear it kind of make a descending arpeggio from time to time in the background. I'm not sure what that is, but there's a whole family of drone instruments out there which can be used. And then you've got your rhythm, which is supplied by the tabla. As we'll hear in other examples, there are lots of other lead instruments which are really interesting, but they're all more or less in the same kind of basic food groups that we've introduced here. Lead, drone, rhythm. Do we want to listen to some tabla, Scott?
I do.
I wanted to get to more of the development of this track one, because I got a new section at 11 minutes, and then I have a new section like at the end when there's a new section at 13 minutes, and then a crescendo at 19. And the note that I had on this...
Carl's making notes. Oh, my God.
Well, I'm doing my job. Because I'm not picking out melodies very much. There's a scale, which I dig. I get the scale thing. But a lot of the interest of the piece, and it's a cool piece, it's rhythmic.
Yeah.
It's like a big drum solo to me.
Yeah. And so I'm glad you brought that up, Karl, because that's the other sort of basic element of the song form that you need to be aware of. The raga described the scale, the mode, and the melody. The tala describes the rhythm and the rhythmic cycle of the piece. And so the raga had a name, Bagasri. The tala also has a name, Ektal. And I think they are actually moving through a couple different talas here, another of which is called the Tintal. But it's basically, these are just names for different rhythmic cycles that the tablas will play. So these guys, they know what it's a standard, right? They know what the tala is and they know how the rhythm goes. But again, they're free to improvise within that basic structure. So just like the sitar player can improvise around that basic ascending and descending form, the tabla player can improvise around this basic rhythmic cycle. So yeah, let's listen to a little bit of that. You want to move? Where do you want to go to?
11
Karl?
minutes?
Well, let's try 11:05.
Here we go, 11:05.
See, now it's got a groove.
Yeah.
You can hear that cool sound from the big drum. It sounds like a big water drop. See, then I was tapping my foot, and I was like, I get this music.
Yeah. So notice you have the same ascending pattern there. It's just much faster now. Da 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 da.
I don't know how much we want to do of it, but then for me, I wrote down crescendo at minute 19.
Mm-hmm.
So getting towards the end. And I thought, it's a bit like harpsichord music because you can't get very loud with it. And so to crescendo, you have to play faster. And this is when Pete Townsend smashes the sitar on the stage.
Yeah.
Keith Moon kicks over the tabla.
Roger Daltrey's swinging the microphone.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so these musicians, again, they're just looking at each other. They're like, they don't know exactly when they're going to end. They're just in a groove right now. And they're looking at each other. They're communicating, they're just repeating this sort of cycle until they find a spot to land on. What they're thinking about, I have no idea. But it's sort of like in jazz where the drummer, is going to sit there and like he's watching the soloist and will play little accents to move from solo to solo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's neat. As we were doing the show, I was poking around. Jimmy Page says he had a sitar before George Harrison.
Oh, he wins.
And you can hear some raga scales in Kashmir if you like your Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
So my introduction to raga was from our favorite movie. This is Spinal Tap. Would you like to hear the boys on raga for a minute and 10 seconds?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm not really sure this was such a great idea. I mean, I don't feel any better than I did at the hotel.
So they're at Elvis's grave at Graceland, and they're looking down at the monument there. Elvis Aaron Presley, January 6, 1935 to August 16th, 1977. And here's what they do.
He was going to do a TV special from here before he died.
Yeah, that's right. A musical version of Somebody Up There Likes Me.
Well, since my baby left me, I've found a new place to dwell.
Well, it's down at the end of Lonely Street, that Heartbreak Hotel.
Do it with the harmony parts.
Right. Well, since my baby... The same key, though, I think. Well, since my baby left me...
If I'm going, since my baby left me.
No, you can't hit that note. Since my baby left me, well, I found a new place to dwell.
That's all right.
Not really. Well, it sounds raga. You don't want to go raga on
No,
this
not with
note.
this, it don't.
It
Well,
does.
since my baby
It sounds
left
fucking barbershop.
Well, don't, hey,
Barbershop raga.
watch the language.
It's a new hybrid.
Peasants are king.
To quote David St. Hubbins, there's a fine line between clever and stupid.
So when I watched that, I don't know, when was that? 1984?
Yeah.
I had to like, raga? I had to get the dictionary.
Toko Raga. Yeah.
That movie's brilliant.
It's so...
It's a movie that my wife does not get at all. I'm dying through the whole movie. You have to have been in like really. You have to really like heavy metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In order to get all the jokes.
And been in a band.
Yeah.
You know, just all the ridiculous conversations you end up having about music.
Barbershop raga. Let's listen to the tabla
goodness.
solo in Ektal.
Yeah. So I picked this one because so this is a live performance of Ravi Shankar, and they don't credit him in the title of this album, but he'll announce who the tabla player is here. I can't pronounce his name, but what I like about this piece is that Ravi gives a little introduction to the audience. I'm assuming this was a Western audience, and he explains what the tabla player is going to do. He's going to play a solo for you, and here is the rhythmic cycle that he's going to base his solo on. And it's Ektal, which we just heard in the previous piece, but played much faster. So Ravi will explain it for us.
The second part of our recital this afternoon begins with a tabla solo by one of our greatest masters of the tabla, Ustad Allah Rakha. Allah Rakha will play for you a rhythmic cycle known as Ek Tal. Ek Tal has got 12 beats or 12 units, divided 4-4-2-2. But he wants to play a fast tempo Ek Tal. Therefore, instead of counting 12, we shall count 6. Divisions would become 2-2-1-1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1.
So fast.
Yeah, one guy, 2 drums.
Yeah. Notice how we can get a different tone out of the drum when he hits it really hard.
The audience doesn't quite know what to do.
Yeah, they're not sure when to clap.
And I don't know what to do either. So this darn drum, it's 2 drums, and the heads are made out of 3 concentric rings. I guess 2 rings with a center. And I, from what I can tell, each of those rings is a little bit of a different thickness. And it being composed of these rings means you can rest the heel of your hand on one of those rings and not completely mute the drum, so it just doesn't go just entirely thunk. Right, and you can press on that drum. You can press on that drum head with the heel of your hand and make it tighter or looser. And so you see here all those, like that. I don't know, like them bending the pitches, that tiny timpani thing where he's tuning it and making pitches on the fly. He's doing that by pressing on the drum with his hand, the drum head with his hand as he plays. What an instrument! The best percussion instrument in the world. It has to be, like the most expressive percussion instrument in the world. Maybe you could get a modern drum kit and put like 40 toms on it and some electronic pads and and then like hang it off the stage and like Tommy Lee but you're not going to get more expression out of 2 cylinders than you can with this. It's astounding. Yeah,
so similarly to the sitar, a big part of the performance of this is the tones you can get with your hands, like in the in-between tones. So Indian classical music is very interested in the notes between the notes. And it's not random. You can't just bend a pitch anywhere. It's got to be to a certain thing, but there are notes between the notes, if you will, that sound sweet in the various Indian modes. And yeah, these drums are they kind of mirror that. You can get a lot of different tones. It's a lot of fun. You showed us a video, Scott, of this guy playing outside, playing a tabla solo. And it's really fun to watch these guys when they really get going, because you heard that higher overtone towards the end of that solo right there that the guy got when he hit the drum in a certain way. These guys, they almost like slap the drums. Like they're just like they're playing hard, and they'll just pick up their hand and just like slap the side of it really hard, and they get these cool like extra overtones out of the drum, and it's fun to watch because
You want a sitar, I want a tabla.
Yeah, I would rather have a tabla. So my irritation with the sitar, we have to talk about this.
Okay.
I have a number of guitars, acoustic guitars, and electric guitars. And I have a couple of steel guitars. Mm-hmm. And the bane of the Western guitar player is fret buzz.
Yeah.
The sitar is comprised almost entirely of fret buzz.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're very interested
I love it.
in playing, when you play your Western guitar, fretting the note and getting a discrete tone out of it. If I fret an F on the first string, I don't want any of the other strings to ring at all.
Yeah.
I want that one to vibrate at that frequency, full stop. And the sitar is designed to not do that. And and I'm not deucing on it, but I'm like, why is this thing great on me so much? It's like, I'm just not trained for it. I'm just not.
It's I think it's probably closest to electric slide guitar.
Yep.
In performance. And with the slide guitar, sometimes you do kind of run into that, like the guy kind of like, accidentally bumps his slide on the side of the neck, or like, kind of doesn't quite put enough pressure on it, so you get a buzz on the string. But that kind of becomes part of the solo. It's got a certain stankiness on it. I think that's kind of what it is here. And yeah, there you go. That's basically what a sitar is. You got those 2 bridges, and you notice the bridge is a big flat piece that the strings rest on top of. It doesn't have a saddle where the string is sort of suspended at one small point over the bridge. It has a large flat surface where the string is stretched across, so it naturally mutes that string. I want to jump a little bit forward to this first song by Jayanthi Kumaresh. This is called Kapi Thilana. Jayanthi is she was trained in Karnatak music. So what we've heard so far was Hindustani. So this is a slightly different form. This would be the Southern Indian tradition. And you'll notice in this piece that we have a very similar layout, a very similar arrangement of instruments. We're going to have a lead instrument. It's not a sitar. Jayanthi actually plays what's called a Saraswati veena, but it's a very similar instrument. It has a slightly different tone, but it's a hollow gourd instrument with strings stretched over it and drone strings. And we have a different rhythm here, and it's a little bit more set in stone. It's going to have a little bit more of an organized feel to it. So if you're kind of struggled with what we've listened to, up to now, maybe this is something that you'll be able to sink your teeth into. So let's listen to Kapi Tilana.
Southern Indian.
There's a little more percussion in this one too. So there's not nearly as much room to improvise here. The melody is much more set in stone.
So I don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
But I've listened to a few things in my day. This sounds to me like it's very westernized. Like this sounds much newer and much more in the western, like it has western influences that the first selection we listened to didn't have. Is that fair?
I think it is more of a dance tune, so it has a different purpose than that raga that we heard. Mm-hmm. It had this particular version. I don't know if it's newer or not. I think it does have ancient origins because it's still based around a raga that has been around for a very, very long time, the Kapi raga. But I think this one is more of a dance song, so it's going to have a different. It's going to have a different feel. It's shorter. It's much more repetitive.
It sounds radio ready.
Yeah, it does.
Radio ready, yeah. And it's a newer recording, too. Yeah, so Jayanthi Kamarish she's a current artist. And there's some really good videos. If you want to see her playing the veena, there's some good videos of her on YouTube. You can see what it looks like. It's got a little bit more of it's a little less droney, has a little bit more punch and attack to it. But it's also got, the veena differs from the sitar in the way that behind the headstock, or kind of towards the top of the neck of the instrument, there's another extra gourd. It's just like a hollow chamber that's attached to the neck that adds more resonance to that instrument. It's very strange. These instruments are so strange to look at, but I just think they're beautiful. I can't imagine what kind of craftsmanship goes into making that thing sound good.
Right.
couple thousand years of
Right.
communal knowledge. I want to point out for the listener who might feel a bit at sea, the scales are also, we skipped over the track where to my ear, it was obvious, is the scales are not equal tempered. They're not Western scales. For me, it was pretty obvious on track 3, but so you have to realize it's going to sound a bit weird. It's going to sound out of tune, but it's not. So that's that equal temperament imperialism.
It's funny.
We have a show on that, by the way.
Do we want to? Do we want to go? What are we going to get next here, Trent? There's.
Well, yeah. Let's listen to. We can go to that track 3 on the playlist that Karl mentioned. This is raga. So we just heard the raga copy. We're going to hear now the Chandrakans. This is another raga.
Chandrakans.
And this is played with a different instrument. This is a plucked instrument, and I kind of struck out. I was trying to figure out what exactly it was. I don't know, but you'll hear the lead instrument here. It sounds probably closest to the hammer dulcimer in Western music, which is like it's sort of like the strings of a piano or maybe a harp that are laid out that you hit with little hammers. This is similar. You have a hammer dulcimer.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Great instrument. So this is a different lead instrument, but again, you still have the basic formula here in terms of arrangement, just a different instrument.
Okay. Chandrakans.
Yeah, that top note is the one that's not quite where you'd expect it to be.
Yeah.
They like their dissonance too, which is cool. Makes it float. One of my notes here, do they ever resolve the chord? And the answer is no.
Not really. Yeah, so what Karl's talking about is that dissonant note between the... So I just found the gentleman playing this instrument right now is Shiv Kumar Sharma. This is the santoor, is what it's called, and it's a hammered dulcimer. So it's a bunch of strings that are stretched across a sort of trapezoidal box, and you hit the strings with little hammers.
So I was thinking, why did the Beatles like this stuff so much?
Because they were hacks and they needed something else to steal. Maybe.
Because all the good drugs came from India and in the Middle East.
Because after 66, they were just nothing but subversive. And
I was just trying to think, without necessarily disagreeing with anything you just said, that this music would be, because it's mood music, literally. I mean, that's what the raga is supposed to be. If you were to indulge in medicinal herbs, this would be the sort of thing you'd like.
Is it?
I don't know. I've never indulged in medicinal herbs. I just have distilled grape stuff.
I did an Instagram live this morning, and a guy said, well, what do you think about psychedelic drug use as a, there's this bunch of wing nuts that listen to Joe Rogan. They're like, if I can just eat enough DMT or ayahuasca, then I'll be nice or something. Like, I'm so sick of it. I don't understand that whole psychedelic movement where you seek to be altered in such a way that you're never you again. I guess I don't have enough self-loathing in me.
I would rather just do it with the music.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Same here. I think that's kind of what this music does, and why we can listen to this and get something out of it without having the cultural context. It may not be the same thing that Indian listeners get out of music, but there's something that music can do that short circuits the brain or appeals to us on a more primitive level that does not necessarily require context.
Music is another way to communicate. You and I can, or the three of us can sit here and talk, and we can do whatever. But the music communicates something to us in a non-verbal way, and that's fine. But I mean, that's good. But I don't know, man. I get so sick of these people with their stupid drugs.
Well, there's no hangover from a raga.
Well, I disagree. That first one, I had the bends, man. I had to go lay down. 21 minutes of that thing. This raga Chandrakans, I'm much less disoriented in that with this Indian hammer dulcimer, if you will. Much less disoriented in it. So I don't have a context in which to listen to these things. It's very difficult for me. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I'm just the only guy that's not afraid to say that. Like if you went to your music, world music class at your community college to get your basic humanities credit, it's not going to be cool if you raise your hand and say, hey, Mrs. Jenkins, Dr. Jenkins, I don't get this shit. Like I can't hear it. You're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to worship it because it's different.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it may be worthy of worship, but I think it's okay for me to say, hey, listen, I know Beethoven, I know Mozart, I know Clifford Brown, I know Waylon Jennings. I don't understand how to listen to this.
Uh-huh.
And I get so tired
watching him try not to swear
of everybody just licking around on all of these other things that aren't of their own just because they're different and they're supposedly divine. And so I think there was an element of that in the Beatles, right? They're like, oh, there's like a secret to the universe in the East that's not available to us. And if we could just go over there and lick on Ravi Shankar enough, then maybe we won't be a bunch of assholes because we know we are. I just get so absolutely sick and tired of all of that. And, and I'm not saying, when I say I have trouble listening to it, I'm not saying I hate it, and I'm not, Thomas. It is challenging for me to listen to this. So I wonder if you're an Indian person from rural India who is steeped in this tradition, and I wonder if I said, hey, come here, Srini, I don't know, what's an Indian name? Ramanujan. Patel. So I'm like, hey, man, and I put the headphones on him, and I'm playing Beethoven's Ninth. Is he going to say the Indian version of WTF? Like, is it going to, like, I wonder if the foreignness and the difficulty in listening, I wonder if it's reciprocal.
Yeah, that's a good thought. So I am a little frustrated because I listen to a lot of classical music, and some of my favorites are, East Asian orchestras. I think they're doing it really, really well, and I'm frustrated because I wish our people would get into this music because it's. I wish European extracted people would get into their own music some.
Yeah, but the Beatles told us it wasn't cool when they went over there and were licking around on Ravi Shankar.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is other people will go in and adapt a different culture's tradition. Because it's different, it has value to them, and then they'll dive into it, and it's not a bad thing for them to have I forget her name. There's this 12-year-old violinist from Singapore, who's just fantastic. So she can spend her life, studying Mozart and Beethoven and Bach, and nobody thinks anything of it. But she can maybe see it because it's different. I don't know. I mean, that's a little switch on what you were saying.
Right.
That, if I play Beethoven for, some of my friends around here, they're just not going to get it. And it's part of their culture, but it's like background music. They don't get it. And if you played it for somebody from a culture that's completely different, they might say, "What the heck is that?" In a good way.
Sure. It's so. I wonder, why is this girl from Singapore or this girl from Japan, like, why is she playing the violin and why is she not playing the samisen?
Like the koto or something.
Yeah, like what's going on?
Yeah.
I don't know, because it's weird and different.
It's interesting. So, Scott, you sent us that video of a gentleman playing tabla. I mentioned it earlier.
Shredding.
And if you read some of the...
Shredding.
Just destroying it. It's great. The guy's fantastic. But if you read some of the comments, it was pretty interesting. Some of the comments were like, what a talent, and descended from, I guess he's the son and grandson of, some notable tabla players. They're like, and it's all, but what a waste of talent, because he's playing fusion. He's known for playing Indian fusion and not sticking with the classics.
Music snobs.
Yeah, so the same impulses exist there as here around their classical music. I think, Scott, I'll just say this: yes, and I don't think those people who have only experienced this music through yoga class and meditation circle and getting a massage. And, there's like an electronic beat. It's the enigma of Indian classical music. Like that
Lord
stuff
have
is
mercy on
just,
us.
it's so watered down. But if you liked something in that, it's okay. Why don't you go to the source and you listen to this stuff instead? Listen to where it all came from. Because there's more there, and it's a different thing.
I want to go back to the other point you made, which I think is perfectly appropriate, that if you're going to complain to Miss Jenkins or to Dr. Jenkins, I don't get this.
She has a PhD in world music. Like,
Well,
she's from Terre Haute, and doesn't have a steel guitar or harmonica, but she has a degree in world music.
Well, she ought to be able to break it down like we've been doing and get your feet wet. So, like a beginner's guide to listening to this stuff. Because you do need, it's like, so 2 examples. It's language and food. Language, when you first listen to a language that you don't know, it sounds like gibberish. Babble. It sounds like the word barbarian in Greek actually means gibberish speakers, because it sounded like bar, 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 bar to them. Like we would say blah, blah, blah. They would say bar, bar, bar. And then you listen, and then it starts to separate. Just by being familiar with the sounds, it starts to separate into discrete words, or at least maybe a sentence. And then you listen more and you get words. Maybe then you say, I ought to get someone to teach me this language. And now it starts to make much more sense to you, and it's accessible to you. So if you just go into this without any knowledge at all, it sounds like that first track's 21 minutes of tuning.
Bar, 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 bar.
Yeah. Or in food. So if you just go to the Indian restaurant in your local town and you order something, well, probably, if you're not used to it, probably you're just going to eat it and start sweating because it's too hot and you can't distinguish anything. It's like just one big thing of what is the thing in pepper?
Capsaicin.
Capsaicin.
It's just
just a big bowl of that. And you won't even taste any of the distinctions in the food.
Yeah, there was a Indian restaurant when I lived in Connecticut. Was the first time Jordan? It was the first Indian restaurant. It was the first restaurant that Jordan and I ate at when we moved there, and everyone was Indian in the restaurant. It was packed with the only white people there, and we're like, okay, this is probably pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was excellent. It's called Navratna. If you're ever in Stamford, Connecticut, go there. But I remember there was a couple things on the menu, because it's all like it's all in. There were English descriptions of what the plates were, but the names were all in whatever language that was. I don't know which one it was, but so we didn't know what we were ordering. We're just kind of like, well, that sounds good, so I'll try that. And there were a couple things in the menu that the waiter said, like, oh, no, that's Indian spicy. Why don't you get this instead?
Don't get native level.
It's like, no, you can't handle that. Like, I won't let you order it. And I'll never forget the spiciest thing I've ever had in my life was there. We ordered some curries, and there was a pepper at the bottom of a curry bowl, and I was kind of scraping the rest of the juice out of it, and I took a big bite, and I bit into something crunchy, and I'm like, what was that? And I started chewing a little bit. I'm like, wow, it's really good. And then my face just melted off. I was bright red and just sweating. Like the waiter came by, like, are you okay? Everybody at my table was like, are you okay? Like, do you need do you need to go outside?
Yeah, and you
ridiculous.
get used to it. You have to become accustomed to high heat food.
Yeah.
Like you have to get accustomed to the scales in this music, and then once you do, you'll start to notice distinctions. Like everybody's favorite chili pepper, the jalapeno, is really just a garbage pepper.
My sister
Hey now.
Flavor's terrible.
My sister sent me a tweet. I'm going to read it. It's from Ethan Winter's Death Scream is the account name on Twitter. And he says, I think the white people don't like spicy food thing mostly applies to middle and upper class whites because every redneck I know buys hot sauces with names like asshole prolapse and shit liquefier every time they go to Ace Hardware. like where I come from, we eat horrible stuff. Like Trudy's grandpa used to grow these cayenne peppers, and I know about the Schofield scale and all. I get it, the Scoville scale. But he used to go out and like cuss at them and poke them with a stick to make them hotter. Like he would go and mistreat these peppers and give them like daddy issues. And then we would just sit down for lunch, or we would go fishing, and we would open a can of sardines and crackers, and eat those, and then just eat these 7-inch long cayenne peppers. Just bite them and eat them, and they were so fucking hot your ears would ring, and they tasted like steel.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I've noticed that, growing up in Texas, I've eaten jalapenos since I was, 4 years old probably. And it's like, I can just crush jalapenos all dinner long.
Yeah.
It's just a nice, like, little extra flavor that goes with the Mexican food. But, if I have whatever peppers they use in Indian spices, it just absolutely destroys me. I can't handle it.
You need to do a linear progression.
Yeah. I need an LP of East Indian
progressive overload
spices. Same thing with wasabi.
You need to go get that.
It goes right through my brain.
You need to get that prolapser over at the Ace Hardware. You guys don't. If you ain't from here, you don't know. Like there's hot sauce by the checkout counter at Ace Hardware.
Yeah. Dave's Insanity sauce, and yeah.
So you go get a quart of buttermilk, some pork rinds, and the prolapser sauce, and you put it on the pork rinds and eat that, and then share a quart of buttermilk with your buddy while you sit on the tailgate.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Oh, man. Well, I'll say this about, appropriation, if you will, in music. Sometimes it results in some cool stuff. We would have never gotten Dave Brubeck's Time Out.
Oh, God.
If he hadn't have gone to Turkey and heard these musicians playing these crazy, odd meter rhythms. And he comes back and he plays jazz, but he's like, that was cool. He figured out, it's like, that was kind of in 5/4. That was cool. That was interesting. I want to incorporate that. So he's using his own style of jazz that's American, but he's incorporating some other influences into it. Is that fusion? I don't think so.
Well, it's the way musicians work.
Yeah.
We're thieves, all of us.
Sure.
Do we want to listen to a chunk of Blue Rondo a la Turk? So Brubeck, he's a West Coast guy. I don't know,
early 60s,
61, 62, I don't know. He came out this album called Take 5. Every song on the album is in a different meter. And he puts out this Blue Rondo a la Turk. There's also a Rondo a la Turk, I think, by Mozart, But this one's blue. So he had been to Turkey and he had heard these weird polyrhythms. And you can count this thing off 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. That's how you count this thing, right?
Yeah, 2, 2, 2, and 3. So it's 9, and 9, 8.
Yeah.
would be the meter. And
1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3. So you can hear it. Here we go.
One two one two one two one two three 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that we
Yeah.
need to hear, but you can hear
Yeah.
he picked up something cool. It tickled his ear, or a wrinkle in his brain, and he brought it back, and he and his guys made something new out of it.
Sure. And, I don't think what he's not doing is he's not picking up a sitar and like, hey, let's play some jazz with a sitar in it, or or whatever, a Turkish instrument. I don't know any Turkish instruments, but he's playing in his own idiom, but drawing influence from the world around him. I think it's what keeps our genres fresh. I mean, I think it's what keeps our musical traditions interesting and fresh. And it can still be ours. We can still, be our own cultural thing, but draw influence from elsewhere.
I'm a fan of Living Colour, the rock band.
Yeah. Yeah.
They came out with this album in 1990 called Time's Up. And there's a little, I don't know, there's a little sitar-ish, there's a raga-ish little break in this song that makes the whole thing. The song is garbage. I don't know if it's garbage, but it ain't much without this. Listen to all this stupid 90s shit. Blah, blah, blah. Now, like, who cares? This song's nothing. There's a little swing there. Who cares? Let me see if I can find that break. I think it's coming up here, I think. That band is so talented. They don't always do great stuff, but man, Vernon Reid, the guitar player, is a killer jazz guitarist. And I think they got together and they're like, guys, we're starving to death.
Right.
Like, how are we not going to starve to death? But there's that break there. It makes the whole tune, in my opinion. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it
sure.
appropriation, or is it throwing a pepper in the pot? It's fine.
I mean, I think if you're a guitar player out there and you're having trouble, all the guitar players get worried about getting stuck in the blues box,
right?
The blues pentatonic scale, and we've heard, we don't need to hear any more of that. Really, it's like the boomers have just destroyed the pentatonic scale for us, because as we heard, even the blues musicians, where all that stuff started from, didn't use the pentatonic scale that much. But Bonamassa has buried that one deep. But if you want to introduce something more interesting lines in your playing, you can draw from the sitar. You can learn how to make little micro bends, play in a different mode. So, like. Right, you can introduce like some of that natural minor stuff. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to ape a raga, but you can use some of the similar ideas and bring some freshness into your playing.
You could also listen to Haydn, Mozart, steal some of that stuff too.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I want to listen to a little bit more. I want to hear some more instruments here. This is on YouTube. We'll post a link in the show notes to this, but this is from the Music of India channel on YouTube. I'm sorry, the Darbar Festival YouTube. But this is basically some really good live performances that were well recorded. And this is a gentleman named Ustad Amjad Ali Khan playing the sarod. And the sarod is another one of these droney sort of lead instruments, but it's played more like a lute. It's a big wide neck. It's fretless. It's got a whole bunch of strings on it, including some drone strings, but it's fretless, and so it's played instead of, where you have frets that you can pull a note across, pull the string across to create a note and bend it around. He's going to slide his finger up and down the neck instead to create different pitches. Extremely difficult instrument to play. If you've ever picked up a fretless anything like a violin or cello or whatever, it's really hard to hit the note just right because there's no marker that tells you where to put your finger. You just got to learn through a lot of practice. So here it is, a sarod and double tabla performance.
Never go double tabla.
Playing this with a pick, a wooden pick.
Just perfect pitch, this guy.
Also, listen to how tight those tabla players are. They're dead on.
Speeding up.
Little in between notes.
So he taps it and presses on the drum head at the same time to make that water drop thing.
And it doesn't sound like two tablas. It sounds like one.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I've decided I couldn't play tabla because I can't sit on the floor like that.
Oh, I would be crippled.
Here's the crescendo. It's coming up.
Good night, Kansas City. Thank you so much. So you guys, hopefully Trent will remember to put that in the show notes. You ought to go watch that because you get to see how they actually do it. there's a big improvisational element here, apparently, and these guys are watching each other with eye contact much more closely than you would ever see any jazz trio. Like they're paying attention to each other more than a regular jazz group would. Not that this is jazz, but it's improvisational and it's live music. They're also having a blast. Like they're smiling and a lot of nonverbal communication going on between those guys. Like this is a delight for them and the audience. It's way better to see them do this than to just listen to this darn thing.
Yeah, and you know, remember how I said that especially with those Hindustani ragas, like the first one we heard. You know, you might not, because the length of the piece is not fixed. If the band is hot and they're feeding off each other and the audience is loving it and there's a good energy there, you know, these guys might extend that piece for 30 minutes. Right. You know, and they're just kind of feeding off the energy. So it's a very organic style of music. It's pretty cool to watch.
Our friend Coach Cox is like, yeah, man, like the Grateful Dead. Yeah, that's exactly.
Oh my God.
We're going to have a Grateful Dead episode.
No, they're horrible.
After Bob Dylan.
Yeah, after Bob Dylan. We'll do a combo.
Until after Bob Dylan.
They're horrible. Sorry, God.
Scott's going to be dead of pancreatic cancer.
Oh, God.
They came to our town.
Who did?
They came to our town, and the theater is not very far from where my dad had his engineering office. And they would abandon their cars on the highway because it's pretty close to Interstate 80.
Who's they?
Leave them on the highway, walk. They would be the Deadheads.
Okay.
The Grateful Dead fans would walk out of the right-of-way of the highway and just camp all over the town and just like pee all over the place.
Like locusts.
We were glad when they left. Yeah.
So I've heard a couple of things here and there from the Grateful Dead that I was like, that's pretty cool. Because they do these like, you know, extended jams and every once in a while they hit on. If you do it that long, eventually you do something good.
Right.
But here's the problem. There's a problem with Grateful Dead fans is you can't ever say that you like the Grateful Dead. You got to shut that down hard and fast. Because if you're like, oh, yeah, you know, I like some of the stuff I've heard, then it starts with they're like, hey, you know, I heard you like reference that that music. You know, it's kind of like this one song that the Grateful Dead did. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, you should check that out. And you're like, all right, yeah, check it out. Oh, that's pretty cool. And then they start sending you live videos. They're like, dude, okay, you like that one? You got to hear 77 at Glastonbury. Dude, you just got to hear it. And then
you're
it's
saying
like,
the dude too fast. Dude.
Yeah, dude. See, I drink coffee and I'm all amped up, so I can't do it. Not on the right drugs.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand the fandom. I really don't.
It was a big party.
On the one hand, yeah, I admire the fact that they've managed to create such an enormous following and so rabid, but at the same time,
You don't get it.
I can't get into it, man.
Yeah, we're gonna find out they're an op, just
not
like
my bag.
We're gonna find out they're an op, just like Marth Rothko and Jackson Pollock was. Like after they've all been dead for 50 years, we're gonna find out that.
Aren't they mostly dead?
I'll be grateful when they are.
I think Jerry Garcia died, right?
No, there's like Phil Lesh is still alive, and they go around and just torment people, towns, pee on towns.
You know, John Mayer did something with them for a while. Dead and Company, whatever it was called.
Ugh.
I don't know.
Is there some more here you want to listen to,
John Mayer.
Trenton?
Well, we didn't really talk about the vocal styles at all. That's really, I mean, there's a whole nother, it's a whole nother thing, right? I can just say that, you know, so all of this music that we've heard is instrumental, but you could replace those lead instruments with a vocalist. And vocal music is another very long tradition, especially in the Carnatic tradition. I think it's more common in Carnatic music to have vocals, but it's very interesting. I mean, the vocal music is very interested again in, I don't know, freedom from pitch. I don't know if you call it that, but it's, again, the notes between the notes.
Right.
I thought they were. So you gave us a recording of those two. You call them kids. Welcome to middle age, Trent. Of
No, don't include me in that. I'm not.
You're the one who called him that.
I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
I did it.
Well, how old are you?
I'm 32.
Yeah, so that's like middle aged.
I'm a master's athlete. Is that right? After 30?
You're on the young side of middle, presuming you're going to live to 72. But I thought their pitch was very good. They were, but they're singing in these scales, which aren't quite the scale that you expect to hear. So they sound off, but they're not. And they have the vibrato and the fluttering sound. So we European descended musicians will tend to do vibrato as a coloration on a note. Okay? But it's not written in. It's just something you do when you sing a note, and you'll just let it vibrate a little bit. It seems like it's part of the music. Like here you flutter, and you do it in a particular way, and it's not just something that happens when you sing. It's there on purpose. I've heard that in Arab music.
Yeah. Very similar to the string pulling that we heard in the sitar. You know, I can't even do it right, but yeah, very intentional. Well, we can listen to a little bit of this. This video is someone sent this to me as an example of this is what you would call a jugalbandi, which is a blending of two different styles. So it's a duet. So there's a guy and a girl, and they're singing in Karnatak and Hindustani styles, but singing the same thing. So they both share the same ragas, but they do them slightly differently. And so a jugalbandi is sort of like a duet where they're a celebration of both styles, and each of them interpreting it in their own way. Now these kids are they are performing a bunch of different ragas in succession in several different languages. So they're singing, but if you listen to the whole video, they go through 3 different languages and a bunch of different ragas. I'll leave this one in the show notes as well. What's cool here is that they flash on the screen when the raga changes and when the language changes. So you can kind of if you sit there, you can kind of figure out the differences in inflection and tone and all that stuff when the language changes. But it just gives you a little flavor for vocal music in India. Now, this is more modern. It's not performed in a concert hall. This is close mic'd and more modern, but you can kind of get an idea for the stylings.
Yeah, this is Indian music TikTok.
But it's an old style song.
கவி பாடவா தேசுலாவுதே தேன் மலராலே లీలగా పువ్వులు గాలికి ఊగా.
So we've changed styles. The first one was Tamil, and this is Telugu. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's 2 languages. So Tamil is one language, Telugu is another language.
గమ గమ ధని జ ధని 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 మదద మదద మద గరి గమ ధని மது நிலை தவழ்ந்திடும் புது நிலையாள் சல்லாபமாய்.
That'd be so hard to sing.
Yeah.
Hai hai ga mani sage hai sakha
They resolved the chord.
That was equal temperament, by the way.
So this is a film song. It's an old film song. It's a popular song, kind of like if they were singing a Frank Sinatra song or something. But it is performed in a very classical style. So what you're hearing there is indicative of classical vocal stylings in the Karnatic and Hindustani traditions. So this is in Hindi now.
Oh my God, I can't do another minute of it. You know what they need?
That one's tough for me. So the instrumental stuff for me is I don't really have a problem with it, but the vocal music is difficult for me to digest.
Yeah, I don't know what the lyric content is here. So it's just bebopping and scatting as far as I can tell, because I don't speak the languages. I have an appreciation for their skill. I can't even sniff this. I mean, they're doing a great
agile.
job of this. But again, because of the language barrier and having no cultural foundation in it, it's just mouth noises to me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure.
Like I'm supposed to love it, and it's not that I don't love it. It's just I'm just being honest. I'm completely unmoored.
Yeah.
It doesn't jive with me. Although the Tamil chick is piping hot. I recognize that. That's universal.
Yeah. There are some beautiful women in Indian classical music. Yeah, I think when you introduce language into the music, that makes it harder for me to appreciate. But I do. It's so interesting, the skill that they have in manipulating their voice around those, those strange. What did you call it, Karl? When they have when the scale ascends with a certain pattern of notes and it descends with a different pattern of notes. So that's what is going on here. Like you go up the scale one way and you go down the scale a different way.
Well, sometimes they change the scale.
And then they change it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know, modulating.
Yeah, that's very common in the Indian modes, for lack of a better term. But yeah, they just are spot on.
Yeah, and I have not sung Indian music. I have attempted to sing Greek music, which will do similar things, where you're in an enharmonic going up, and then you're in a hard chromatic going down, and you have to switch your mind. And those kids were excellent. It's so hard. It's not like singing along with a piano. You've got to have all of these scales in your head. So, for example, the I don't even know, how do they write their music? I'd be interested in that.
So, yeah, I wanted to bring that up. I wanted to get to that because this is very important. If you listen to, you hear them singing, and sometimes they sing the, I believe they were singing the sargam, the sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, the tones of the scale, and then moving up and down the scale by just singing those, singing the notes. And then also if you listen to that tabla solo that we heard a while back, you'll hear in the middle of the solo, Ravi will call out the pattern, and the tabla player will answer it, and he'll go like digga digga da digga digga da 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 digga 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 da, and he'll sing it. Well, that's central to the way that this music was transmitted through the centuries. Typically, when you learn Indian classical music, you learn it through a teacher, a guru. And you learn, I think the way that works is that you first learn to sing the ragas. So you'll sing these melodies and you'll sing the rhythms, the talas, so that they're just burned in your mind. And what I think's so interesting about that is that, think about Greek music. We have ancient Greek music. We have some writings about Greek music, but it's mostly descriptive. I don't know if we have any staff music from the ancient Greeks, but we certainly don't know what it sounds like.
Nope.
We can make a guess, but that's it, because there was no way to transmit what is the sound of the notes. Well, when you have an oral tradition of teaching, everyone learns to sing this music before they learn their instrument. Well, you can actually preserve what the intonation of the notes are. It's not equal tempered. It's a different temperament. So you can preserve that through the oral tradition where you can't through a written
As
tradition.
long as you have a continuous culture.
As long as you have a continuous culture. So this music at some point did get written down, and there's, there is an Indian form of notation for this stuff, but it was primarily transmitted orally first. Super interesting to me.
Do we want to go listen to Ravi's Cast Off Child next?
Yeah, Anushka. Yeah.
You mean Sarah Jones?
And Nora,
Nora Jones is the one I was talking about.
Nora Jones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ravi Shankar had at least 2 daughters. I don't know how many kids he had, but Anushka Shankar is a sitar player, a very good one. And Nora Jones, Geetala Shankar, or whatever her name was, now Nora Jones, they did an album together, which I think is really cool. It's kind of a folky sort of album with Anushka singing and on sitar and some Indian, this is fusion, some Indian arrangements, but it's folk music basically.
Jones was born Geetali Shankar in 1979 in Bedford-Stuyvesant, however you say that, Brooklyn, New York, to American concert producer Sue Jones and sitar maestro Pandit Ravi Shankar. Her parents separated in 1986. She lived with her mother growing up in Grapevine, Texas. Blah, blah, blah. Went to a performing arts school in Dallas. Blah, blah, blah. Ended up going to Interlochen Center for the Arts during the summers. Got a Downbeat Student Music Award for Best Jazz Vocalist and ended up going to UNT, which has a good jazz program, by the way. And in 1999, she left Texas for New York City. How does that happen? How does she get the downbeat? How does that work? That you get this mediocrity? I'm sorry. This fine lady from Houston gets a Downbeat Student Music Award. How does that happen?
She's pleasant.
Yeah,
to listen to.
There's
I think this stuff is better
shortage of pleasant size 6 girl singers.
I think her stuff with her half sister Anushka is some of the better Nora Jones I've heard.
The more people that she collaborates with, the better you'll think of her. Let's go listen to The Sun Won't Set featuring Nora Jones with her Shankar half sister here.
The sun won't set, not now, not yet. The sun won't set, not now, not yet. Golden ember spinning round, the day is almost done. I wonder how it felt beneath the early sun. Each sunset keeps me still. The tree has shed its leaves. The wind, the evening chill is hardest to receive. The sun won't set, not now, not yet. The sun won't set, not now, not yet. The sun below the trees starting to get cold, holding on through change. The day grows old. I missed the morning heat fall upon my face. I wish I knew you then. It's always sunset in this place. The sun won't set,
But sitar is more interesting than she is.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, she's pleasant, you know?
She's no Rachel Price.
No, she's no Rachel Price. All right, let's talk about that. There is no shortage of, let's talk about it in terms of movies. There is no shortage of 9.5s from the Midwest with a neutral accent who are sample size who can be in movies. And they all want to do it. They all want to do it. Like if you're a hot chick from your school and you can wear clothes that fit right off the rack and you're a 9+ and you've got the neutral accent and you're used to manipulating people since you were a toddler and you can cry at the drop of a hat and falsify emotional states, like you want to go to Hollywood and get the movie deal. So if you're the producer and you're like, okay, we're going to push in Michael Bay here and $200 million on this gamble, we got to have somebody super, super compliant who's going to do all the marketing stuff we tell them to do. If we tell them to date one of the, I don't know, some pop star guy, then she's got to go date the guy and be in the tabloids. Like if we tell her to do stuff, she's got to do it because we got to push we got $250 million pushed in on this thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, here come all the hot mediocrities, and you've got to test them, right? Like how do you pick which ones? How do you know Jennifer Lawrence is the it girl? Because there was another girl that lived within 70 miles of her, super cute too. Been falsifying emotional states since she was a baby too. So what do you do? Like, how do you pick?
Well, that's the producer system.
I don't know if I can say it.
You have to introduce a compliance test early in the interview process to make sure that she will do what you tell her to do to protect your investment. They are very willing to comply with this compliant test because it is so competitive to get that job because they want that dopamine hit from all of the approval and the cover story on the Vogue magazine and, being on every third page of People magazine and then being Katy Perry and getting 40 million Instagram followers. Like they want it so they comply. So if you're Norah Jones, like I know a ton of chicks that play the piano very well, write a pretty okay song, have some character to their voice, and can play at the hotel lounge at your downtown hotel and hold the room's attention and look good and are pros and show up on time and do what they're supposed to do. I mean, there are tons of them, guys. They're more talented than me. There's no question. I can't do what Norah Jones does. But why Norah? Yeah. How Norah?
Because, I don't know what she did. It might just be because she's Shankar's kid.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. Well, I was going to say, why Billie Eilish? Okay. Right. Like, she's
Yahtzee.
She's good. She's above average looking, but
where do you go?
Come on. There's, but again, Billie Eilish grew up in LA. Both of her parents were actors. She's not like, she was not the child of really famous people, but there's certainly people with connections. So, so she gets they already know that they already have they have a stylist already that they've worked with for years. They have a PR person. They have an agency. All those things they already have, and they already have those relationships. So Billie Eilish, is 13 and shows some interest and a little bit of talent in the entertainment industry. So they've already got the whole infrastructure.
Right. The compliance test for Jones is probably, her parents, her mom is a concert promoter in New York City, and her dad's a recording artist. Like, the family pressure is going to be there. She doesn't have to do anything reprehensible with a Weinstein to get the job because, her family's already like, oh, this is what we do. But
nobody complained about him until they did.
Right.
Because you got the gigs.
And it wasn't the A level that got the gig either that complained. That started the complaining.
Yeah. The moral of the story, when you said that of the 9.5s, I thought Megan Fox.
Oh my God. Is she a 9.5?
Is she a 9.5? I think so.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe I'm generous with my scale. But, but how do there's girls like that. The moral of the story, dear listener, is most of what you consume from the dispensers of consumable media is fake. It's been manufactured. These are There's no particular reason that these people are the ones that. I mean, you're better off. Gosh, if there were still live shows, you're better off just going to a bar and listening to a guy play his guitar and sing something.
And that's not to say, by the way, that Norah Jones can't carry a live show. You know,
right? But a lot of them are good.
Yes,
that's why they're there. You know.
Yeah, but is she like the paragon of whatever that is? I don't even know exactly what her genre is. This whatever
adult contemporary,
right?
Album oriented.
She got 9 jazz Grammys, but she's not particularly jazzy.
Well, she wouldn't have gotten one of those in 1958. Like jazz has this down to the point that if you show up, you know, you get a nomination. I mean, there's not many. It's not as vibrant a scene as
it's like powerlifting in your 50s.
Right. This is a good segue into, not that we need to leave this subject yet, but I've been working on an outlaw country playlist. I've got it down to 93 songs. And I think this is a good segue. Like if this other stuff is fake, you know, what happened? So I've been listening to my outlaw country and trying to put it all together. I actually bought some books as well. I'm like, what does other people say about this? What do other people say about this? You know, these stupid books. And they all get it wrong. They're all saying that it's not completely, but they're all saying that this outlaw country music was commercial. Like, okay, Willie and Waylon couldn't make the kind of music they wanted, so they left Nashville and they went to Austin, and then they made all this money and wanted, Honky Tonk Heroes album sold 2 million copies, and then blah, blah, blah. Well, if they couldn't make the kind of music they wanted, what did they want to make? And how did that differ from what Nashville wanted them to make? Like what exactly? It's not just that there was money, guys. Like they weren't allowed to make a certain kind of music. What is that certain kind of music like? And why weren't they allowed to do it? But they all just say, oh, they wanted the freedom to record and they went to Austin and they had an audience and they could do it. Okay, that's true. But why? Like what were the differences? What exactly were the creative differences between Nashville RCA Nashville, and Waylon? Yeah. Like what were they? And so if Norah Jones gets to record and she gets the push, they push her and they lobby and she gets the AMA award for this or for that or whatever, then she's complying with a vision that recording studio has. So, you know, you say it's fake. I mean, you can almost guarantee that almost across the board, if somebody has recording success, it was dictated by an algorithm or a formula that was predicted to be successful.
Now, one of the good things about the mess we're in right now, once you find music, for the music consumer, because it is a little bit easier to distribute your stuff, once you find something good, I don't know, it's easier to find. You know, in 1985, when I'm going to Discount Records trying to buy stuff, I can only have the stuff that the big companies have put out, where I can find all sorts of weird crap on Instatube that I like. I've got to beat the algorithm. I got to find it. Yeah. But so there is an opportunity for you, dear listener, to find music that is not fake.
And be careful, because they're going to tell you Sturgill Simpson is outlaw music. They're going to lobby and get him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and then he's going to tell you to do psychedelics. Like you're already a rural person, beset with opioids and all kinds of degeneracy, and then they're going to put this guy in front of you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I can never understand a lyric that he sings.
Because they don't make any sense. Sturgill Simpson he has been anointed to fill that genre by, you know, big recording labels.
Yep. Well, look back at what they did to Buddy. You know, he goes to Nashville and gets a contract, and you know they changed his voice. They're like, "Hey, listen, we got, you know, you need to sing it up here because that's what we need. We need you to be the next." I don't know if Bobby Darin was out. We need you to be that kind of thing. And then they're like, "Well, you know, that didn't really work." So, and they didn't have auto-tune back then. So they're like, well, I'll just drown it in echo and reverb. And they made it play the song too fast and all that stuff, right? And it flopped. It sucked. But, then he goes and re-records it, and it's totally different. It's Buddy all of a sudden. It's him.
In Clovis, New Mexico, he had to flee
Yeah. Yeah.
to a 40,000
There's another way you
population.
can get music that is not fake,
How's that?
which is you get a guitar and you learn 3 chords and you go find chords and lyrics to whatever you want to sing, and you sing it on your back porch.
Yep.
There you go. That's real music. Might not be very good, but then again, it might. But at least it's at least what you want to express in that moment.
Yeah.
So I encourage that. Get yourself a sitar and a tabla, and sit on your porch and do ragas.
I probably need to get a tabla. I can imagine burning hundreds of hours with that thing. Just getting oriented to it and just messing with it. Like what an interesting thing that is. And it seems more accessible than the sitar. It's probably not. It's extraordinarily complex. It takes an enormous amount of control and experience to do it. But
anything
really
worth doing is worth doing badly.
You bet.
That's right. That's right.
Any more anything else that you'd like to cover here, man?
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it off. Just like European music, this music is very old, and it is enormously vast. And the cultures of India, there's no monoculture of India. The cultures of India are very complex and rich and varied, and there's just endless seas of music for you to dig into here. So, hopefully this is a good taste, but undoubtedly I screwed some things up in explaining this music, but hopefully you have a little bit better understanding than you did, and it was interesting enough to go and explore on your own.
What are we going to do next?
What do you guys want to do? I've been working on this list, but you know what I would like to do? We need to do this at some point because people keep asking for me to put together an outlaw country, whatever. But I was thinking we ought to make a goal of covering every one of Beethoven's symphonies one at a time. It'll take us a long time to do, but I'm very interested in that.
That'd be fun. Well, I think we had talked about reading a little bit of Plato's Republic on music and discussing that. So while you whittle down those 94 songs that you have on your playlist, maybe we could take a little break from the music and talk about Plato. And then
but it'll need a playlist
to your outlaw country.
Yeah, there's actually 77 songs so far.
Oh, okay.
I'll get it down.
That's a svelte.
Well, those are 2 great ideas. Like the back end of Symphony 5, nobody ever listens to, and you need to.
Yeah.
Of Beethoven. And somewhere in our list, I want to do, I was going to say the greatest rock and roll album of all time, but that's big talk, but I don't think it's unwarranted. Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, we need to do that.
So which one you want to do next?
Who's going to put together a Republic playlist?
Beethoven and Plato.
It's going to have the theme from Shaft in it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think why don't we do Beethoven, and we can do Outlaw Country after that, and then put together our Plato playlist in the meantime.
The backside of the 5th.
Well, we'll do the whole 5th, but
okay.
Nobody ever listens to the backside, and it's the better
Does that
part.
give you, Scott? Are you just like shaking with anticipation to do that Outlaw show?
No,
Do we need to do
I'm
it?
not, because I'm just going to get roundly attacked. I'm pretty sure.
You want to stew over it for a little
That's
bit?
fine. No, I'm interested in Beethoven. I was listening to the 9th the other day, which is the best symphony, and I was like, "Gosh, we got to talk about this guy. We got to talk about this guy like all
the
day."
The 5th
every
is
day.
the best, and the 9th is the best, and the 3rd is the best, and the 6th one is the best.
But which is the best?
7's
best
pretty
one?
good.
Which is the bestest?
You have to pick.
More bester.
I don't know. They're like, there's a different raga for every mood and every season.
Right. Yeah, it's so good. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll do Beethoven 5. That'll be the next one.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you, Trent, for putting this together. I enjoyed it. You have been helpful to me. I have been interested in this, but I hadn't spent a great deal of time on it because it's just I don't have the context. Like I know my music theory and all that, but this is not Western music theory in a lot of ways, and all the we didn't really talk about all the weird polyrhythms and stuff that they use with the tabla drumming, and it's very different, and you've helped make it more accessible to me, and also just having somebody, right, wrong, or indifferent, just say like, hey, here's 5 tunes. Like, here's 5 things to go listen to. That's a great help, too. So thanks for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh. Go to onlinegreatbooks.com/music and get on the waiting list there. You guys aren't doing that. And, I hate you for it a little bit. Like, we do this for you for free, and I'm just telling you to get on the waiting list, and for some reason... it's just too much. It's a bridge too far somehow. So I don't know. I'm having trouble.
How about we
with it
rephrase that? We will love you more.
Yeah,
if you get on the mailing list.
I hate them for it a little bit. I won't hate them anymore if they get on. If they go ahead and crank that up. Yeah, I would be fine with that. I don't understand. But go do that, and we'll be opening enrollment here in about 30 days. And if you want to read things like Plato's Republic, and then Schopenhauer wrote some stuff about music aesthetics that we should probably cover at some point, which is really interesting. Read a little of Aristotle's Poetics and Rhetoric, because I think music is rhetorical in nature, or that's at least one of the things that it is. You can go and read with us there, and learn how to do it. We're talking about how to listen to this weird music, how to step into a genre that you're not familiar with. Well, we do that with these books almost every single month at Online Great Books. The first time somebody picks up Aristotle, it is a new kind of thing. And, we help kind of, I don't know if we shepherd them through it or show them the guideposts so they can learn how to read these new kinds of old books and get an understanding of those things. Did you see that Zach in Slack said how to research something 2021 edition? Did you see this?
Yeah, I did.
It says 1, open up Google. 2, close Google because you'll never get unbiased search results. 3, open up DuckDuckGo. 4, close DuckDuckGo because it still uses Google. 5, go to library. 6, leave library realizing that librarians these days don't know how to research either. 7, lay on bed lamenting the state of education in America for an hour. 8, ask OGB for resources, since these people may as well be actual librarians, historians, wizards, keepers of the old world. Yeah, so we've got stuff going on in Slack that would probably astound you over there. Yeah.
Yep, neat people.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for listening. Go to onlinegreatbooks.com/music and sign up for our mailing list. That would be a help to us. We'll send you a newsletter, and we'll try to put some goodies in there that'll make it worth your while. And go to iTunes and leave a review, or go to Stitcher or Google Play or wherever you listen and leave a review. That is always a help to us and a great deal of fun for me to read. Yes. Anything else, gentlemen?
Nope.
All right. Well, Beethoven's Fifth, and then some outlaw country, and then I get hate mail. And we'll talk to you guys in a couple of weeks.